Hi there, and thank you for joining me for today's live reading of Divided Lives by K.R. Mullins, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Flash. What was that? Lottie asked as she tried to sit up in her bed. Why is it so bright? Is it morning? She shook her head, trying to clear her vision. Rose, did you hear? She trailed off, looking toward her lover. Frowning, she saw something wasn't right. Rose's eyes were wide open, and there was blood on her face and chest. Rose! She grabbed her shoulders. There was no reaction from her. Lottie started to scream, but the sound didn't make it past her lips as her world tilted and went black. The second time she woke, her vision was clear. A sudden memory made her look quickly to where Rose should have been. She was alone. Rose, she called. Where was she? Sitting up, she struggled to remember the night before, holding her pounding head in her hands. I didn't think I had that much to drink. Blood, she thought suddenly, remembering. She jerked the sheets to her and uncovered Rose's side of the bed. There was none. A dream, she thought, falling backward onto her pillows. Thank goodness. Rose must have already gone. Breakfast wasn't something she normally stayed around for. What happened last night? Where did the evening start? She thought, trying to remember. With Patrick. Her brother had arrived a few days ago. His home was in Chicago, and he was in town to accompany their aunt and uncle to the steamship for their trip to France. Lottie and Patrick has met with them for dinner and the send-off. The night before, after their dinner and their aunt and uncle, their motor car, a green Scout with the top folded down, bounced along on their ride back to the village. Patrick glanced over at her and asked, Lottie, where shall I drop you? When he was in town, they had dinner together, but separated after to spend time with friends. The tea room, please, she requested. She looked over at him and asked, Will I see you tomorrow? The next day was Friday. She knew he would be going home on Saturday. I have some meetings in Manhattan that will take up most of the day. How about Saturday morning for breakfast and a ride to the train station? He suggested. She thought of her calendar and said, That would be lovely. Call me if your plans change. I will, he said as he pulled the car to a stop, narrowly missing a young man and woman who appeared inebriated. The couple hadn't noticed their near accident and continued across the road. Patrick laughed at their antics as he jumped out and went around to help Lottie out of the car. See you tomorrow, sis, he said as he bent down to kiss her on the cheek. She stayed where she was and watched him jog back around to the driver's side. The car bounced and rumbled as he pulled onto the busy street. The evening was pleasant, a cool breeze moving through the area, and even the sidewalks teeming with people didn't bother her. She took a moment to look around before going in. Like most retail spaces in Greenwich Village, the tea room, where she would spend part of her evening, was located in a storefront on the bottom part of a red brick building. The buildings on either side of it were different shades of red brick, rising to 5 stories. Each of them had a personality of its own, different brick patterns and awnings, some with large windows and some with none. This type of building stretched down the blocks in the village. She maneuvered through the crowd to reach the entrance to the tea room. The location had moved a few times, but seemed to find a more permanent home here. The owner didn't have a second job, and sometimes the income from the business wasn't enough to keep it open. Most of the individuals living in the village chose to live in the area for the cheap prices and atmosphere of free speech. The tea room provided both. As she entered, she noticed the furniture. It could be called an eclectic mix. The tables were pieced together out of planks of wood and found chairs. Nothing matched in shape or design, but it was tied together with white paint. The walls were painted the same bright white. The difference was that the owner had asked a local artist to paint what they had liked on the walls. It made for a colorful and sometimes garish look. It also fit the women of the tea room perfectly. The women at those tables wore unique clothes, some in pants, long flowing gowns or skirts, and shirtwaists. No one questioned what the others chose to wear. It was their outward expression of who they were on the inside. I love that, she thought. She looked down at her outfit and smiled. Her dress was conservative that evening with a high-neck shirtwaist, a long skirt with a petticoat, and dark stockings. Definitely not an outward expression of me, at least not tonight, she thought wryly. She reached up to unpin her short hair and let it fall to her shoulders. Drinks were being served throughout the space. It was called a tea room, but few people drank tea. Most preferred the harder options, usually whiskey or vodka. The owner was not licensed to sell alcohol, and those who drank were at risk of arrest by the local police. The owner seemed to have some sort of deal with them to limit the raids for a fee, a well-known system of graft. Conversations drifted by as she passed the different tables. The first, suffragettes sat around their table, loudly demanding more movement and more marches. They had had a very successful one in May of that year. She waved at them when she saw Henrietta at their table. Though Hen had other interests, the vote for women was her current passion. She was involved with the parades, a new development in the fight for women's suffrage in the United States. At another table, the ladies were discussing the village kids. They were being told they couldn't play at Washington Square Park. As she passed, she heard Philippa talking about being approached by a man while she was playing with the kids. Philippa worked as a teacher at the local village school and had limited space where the kids could play safely. What happened exactly? Lottie asked, hesitating briefly at their table. Philippa looked over at her and commented seriously. A man came up to me in the park and told me our kids were not allowed to be there. She had to take a deep breath before continuing. He thinks we're somehow degrading the park. He also said loudly that he's on the Washington Square Association and demanded we leave and stay away until we settle the dispute. Her face crumbled with despair, and she asked, Lottie, how can we destroy the character of the park? You can't. The park is there for everyone. Philippa, get me the information and I'll write a letter to the committee, Lottie said firmly. Could you do that for us? I can bring it over to your apartment. Just slide it under my door. I'll take a look at it tomorrow. Will that be enough time? Yes, of course. Do you think that will work? She asked hopefully. We might be able to delay any relocation of the children and propose a park here in the village. I don't have time tonight, but give me that letter as soon as you can. The ladies liked that response and started volunteering to help put a letter together. As Lottie walked off, Philippa called, Thanks for helping. Just get me the letter, she reiterated over her shoulder. We will, Philippa said, looking around at the ladies at her table. Lottie walked past another group involved in a discussion about newspapers spread out on the table. The heated tone caused her to pause. The subject being discussed shouldn't have surprised her. Charles Becker. She had kept up with the case. It involved gamblers, police corruption, and the murder of an informant. Since she started working for Justice Goff, she knew to stay away from conversations involving cases going to trial. She might inadvertently say something that could put her in an uncomfortable position later, though she didn't expect to have it assigned to her court. That type of case was normally assigned to the general session. She passed other groups talking about politics and the policies they wanted to have changed. Normally, she would have enjoyed some drinks and a lively talk with the various groups, but tonight, she hadn't come to drink or discuss liberal politics. There was a specific reason she was there, and that reason was Rose. She spotted her toward the back. As she got closer, she saw that she was already occupied with another woman. Lottie recognized her. Lily, she thought. She watched the hand Rose had down Lily's shirt, caressing her breast. Rose was looking around and spotted Lottie. She called her over. Sit down, join me. She slowly pulled her hand out of Lily's dress, squeezing her nipple on the way. Lily moaned, trying to keep Rose's hand where it was, but Rose had other interests, and instead of putting her hand back where Lily wanted it, she used it to wave at her. It was her dismissal. She shot a glare at Lottie as she pulled her top together over her exposed breast and moved to another table. I hope I didn't interrupt anything, Lottie said in a low voice, not meaning it. No, not at all, Rose murmured back. She reached over and brushed Lottie's hair off of her face, a caress she used to show her interest. They had an on-again, off-again relationship. Casual sex had become something she looked forward to with Rose. Lottie leaned forward and kissed her softly, seeing how receptive she was. Rose returned the kiss warmly and murmured, I was hoping to see you tonight. Were you? Lottie asked coyly. Yes. Would you like me to spend the night? She asked. Rose had always been forthright. When Lottie first moved to the village, she had never been with a woman. In a move very similar to the one she used tonight, Rose had walked up to her in the tea room, pushed her hair aside, and kissed her softly. I would, said Lottie, leaning into her. Rose returned the embrace and glanced over Lottie's shoulder toward the door. She pulled back slightly and said, I need to make a quick phone call first. Help me finish my tea, and we can head to your apartment. Lottie nodded and watched as she stepped into the back where the phone was located. She drank quickly, gathered her things, and moved to the door to wait. Rose stepped out, took Lottie's elbow, and headed to her apartment. Present day. Pulling herself into the present, she thought, dream, only a dream. Rose is fine. I know she is. She must have left. She might sleep over, but she would often leave before Lottie was awake. Chapter 2. Lottie got up to begin her day and made her way to the washroom to take a bath. After, she went to the closet to select her clothes. The outfit she normally wore to work was a long-sleeved shirtwaist, fashioned like a man's shirt with buttons down the front, and was worn with tailored pants. Her Aunt Emma favored pants when she was working and had made Lottie several pairs before she moved to New York City. They were perfect for running around the village, but not for her day job, working as a clerk for Justice Goff. The office required women to wear skirts at all times, with no exceptions. The dream stayed with her even as she was dressing. "I'll find Rose this evening and we'll laugh about this," she promised herself. Rose didn't have to work, so she was probably at her apartment. Though with her sexual appetite, she thought ruefully, that girl she was caressing last night might be what she needed to get to this morning. As she continued to get ready, she reflected on Rose's opinion of her job. Lottie, like many of the other women in the village, had a college degree. They lived divided lives. During the day, using their degrees, they worked as teachers, lawyers, and other jobs. During the night, they put the day's worries aside and enjoyed themselves to the fullest. Lottie's degree was in law from Chicago Tech. She had practiced for several years before moving to New York City. She sat on the bed, pulling on her boots, thinking about the many fights she and Rose had about this topic. Rose never understood balance and appropriate behavior for working outside the village. Lottie had accepted that who she was outside of the village must be different than the person she was inside. That boundary was a necessary protection for them, and so far, no one had breached the trust on either side. Chapter 3. She grabbed her bag that was sitting on the chair by her bedroom door. Folding her skirt, she added her work shoes to it as she moved into the living room. The boots she wore would be changed out at the office for more appropriate shoes. Her quick breakfast consisted of fruit and bread with butter. She thought longingly of her mama's breakfasts. Her family owned a bakery, and of all of the children were expected to put in time working there. Lottie had worked there when she was a teenager, so she could bake, but she preferred her mama's cooking to her own. It would be a while before she went home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Walking to the bedroom, she slipped her blue bow tie around her collar on the high neck of her shirtwaist and tied it. Turning to pick up her bag, she swung it onto her shoulder and walked quickly over to the dresser to glance in the mirror. Oh my, she thought. Her short, reddish blonde hair was a mess. She picked up her brush and pulled it through. Retrieving her hat, she dusted it off before putting it on her head. It was a burgundy French military turned up in the front, showing off her bangs with a large, dark burgundy ribbon wrapped around it. She inserted colorful feathers into the band. A knock sounded on her door as she was leaving. Frowning, she glanced down at her watch, and a feeling of dread washed over her. She forced herself to open it and was not surprised to see Danny standing there. "What's she done now?" asked Lottie in exasperation, glaring at him. Danny took off his hat and started to worry the brim. "She's in jail." Again? She didn't have to ask who he was talking about. This was about his wife, Henrietta, who was also her best friend. "She got picked up at the rally last night," he explained. "What rally?" she asked, confused. "The last time I saw her, she was at the tea room." "Well, the ladies got into their cups and decided to have an impromptu one. They had the signs from the May rally stored at the tea room and went off on their own. She thought there should be another one as a reminder." "Last night?" she asked incredulously. "Yes," he responded quietly. "Who else was arrested?" she asked, wondering how expensive this was going to be. "Just her," he admitted. "The others ran off and left her with the signs. She continued to demonstrate. The local police picked her up." "You didn't go?" she pressed, surprised. Danny supported Henrietta in all things. "No, I had to do inventory at the store. Even if I had gone, I couldn't have stopped her. You know how she is. She's so passionate about her belief in change." "What precinct?" she asked, resigned. "The regular one. The 6th. Of course. Where else would she be?" She took a deep breath and tried to stem her building anger. "What are the charges?" "What she says they are, or what they say?" he asked dryly. "Disorderly conduct and talking back to an officer." "Well, at least it was suffrage and not nudity this time. She did have her clothes on, didn't she?" Lottie asked hopefully. He nodded. Being married to a free spirit could be trying. Some of Henrietta's causes were ridiculous, but she had made headway on several big issues. Before leaving Chicago, she'd had a successful campaign to reduce children's working hours in the glass factories. After that, she had gone to New York to participate in a demonstration and met Danny. "It has been a busy year for her," she commented. Yes, I think she's looking for a cause to work on, that she feels there's something she could be championing. He shrugged, wishing he could help her direct her energy. As they started downstairs, Lottie looked over to Danny and said, "Her work in January with the Lawrence Mill operatives was amazing." He hesitated on the stairs. "It was. When we first heard about the wage cuts, she wanted so much to be a part of it. Putting the women in front of the picket lines, protecting the men, was brilliant." He smiled proudly and said they were singing constantly, uplifting songs. That one thing kept the police and militia back. They didn't want the negative attention. "It finally changed when Big Bill Haywood traveled there," she commented. "Yes, he listened to the people and the demonstrators. The pay was increased and people went back to work. Hen wants her days to all end like that." "Not all can," she said. "No," he acknowledged. "We'll have to figure something out to keep her out of trouble. You know I'm going to have a hard time convincing the judge to keep her out of jail with all of her other arrests. Please, do what you can. I'll stop by the police station on the way to work. Will you meet me there?" she asked. "Yes, I have a cab waiting." She nodded and they started downstairs again. Her mind was on Henrietta. She was glad Danny reminded her why she had to occasionally bail her out of jail. Henrietta was a constant fixture in her life, especially since Lottie got her law degree. She had been pulling Hen out of the scrape she managed to get herself into.